Welcome back to the Sunday Talk Show. I'm Rueben Abati. Now we look at President Buhari's trip to Turkey to participate in the D8 summit. The Office of the President of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, has hailed the bilateral agreements their leader reached with his Turkish counterpart, Recep Erdogan, during a visit to Ankara earlier this week. President Buhari, who had traveled to Turkey for the D8 summit, and his host committed to increase cooperation in a number of areas: security, trade and investment, and civil aviation. Abuja said it's expecting Ankara's Minister of the Economy to visit Nigeria next month to explore opportunities to boost investment into the African country. This was the Nigerian leader's first visit to Turkey since he took over in 2015. Now, I've seen a number of comments about the president's visit. Some people have said, yeah, it's good for Nigeria to be part of the D8, even if trade among the countries of the D8 is just about 7%. The volume of trade between the European Union and some of the member countries is as high as 65%. So do you think the D8 is really delivering in terms of value?
Well, I guess that the important thing is that the president is taking steps to engage on the economy, on trade, and on investment. Whatever has been the history before now, I do think that engaging is a positive development. And we can only hope that as the Minister of the Economy is going to visit soon, I guess we should be going to prepare, our own list of what we think we want to get out of the relationship, rather than dwelling. Bygones are bygones. If we debate till tomorrow what's happened up till now, we are not going to add any value. But what opportunities are there now that we can exploit, in our bilateral relationship with Turkey, both on trade and on investment?
Well, the Nigerian government went to the summit with a shopping list, of issues: terrorism, cooperation in agriculture, boosting trade between Turkey and Nigeria, and a whole lot of issues: health, security, and all of that. But when you speak about engagement itself, it's desirable, you make it sound like, look, the ceremony is more important than the substance. And you'll find Nigerian leaders traveling around the world, but at the end of the day, what you get is just a ceremony, and there isn't enough follow-up.
No, I'm not talking about the ceremony. I'm talking about the discussions, the releases, the information that has been made available. Now, it's good, that we in the past, foreign visits had emphasized more of security and corruption. Now, there's no mention of corruption now, because people were worrying that let's be positive, in our international engagement. So we are making an issue of trade, we are making an issue of investment. I'm saying that we shouldn't fail to recognize that as a good step forward. And we should key in on that. That should be our emphasis. I'm not an expert on security, so experts on security should grab all of that. I'm an economist. I'm happy that, it's rare, in the previous visits, to have, trade and investment being emphasized.
Well, let's go to...
I think we should not let it go.
Let's go to the gentleman in Abuja. Bolaji, one of the issues that came up in the bilateral meeting between President Buhari and President Erdogan is terrorism. And, the reports indicate that President Buhari, in fact, condemned the incident in Turkey last year. And also, there was a lot of talk about terrorism. I don't know whether you followed that, but is the opinion out there already decided on actually whether there was a coup in Turkey last year or not, and whether indeed, Turkey is targeting some political figures, and whether it was wise for Nigeria to have taken a position on the side of the government?
I didn't follow it much, but I I know that there was almost a diplomatic row between Turkey and Nigeria, after that alleged coup d'etat, which led the president of Turkey to clamp down on a number of opposition elements. I think that a number of Nigerians, also, suffered from that. Some Nigerians were accused, of belonging to the opposition organization that attempted to topple that government. Now, I think that the visit of the president to Turkey, I think that one will need to wait for the details, particularly as it relates to security. We will recall that there have been some, the custom had impounded some arms, some light arms, which were said to have been imported from Turkey. That certainly will have some security implications for Nigeria, particularly against the background, of the Boko Haram terrorism that is ongoing in Nigeria. But like I said, one will need to wait for the details of the discussions between President Buhari and President Erdogan of Turkey to be able to make an informed analysis, of the import of the president's visit to Turkey.
I think part of the details, of course, is that the Nigerian government condemned the Fethullah organization being accused of terrorism and, coup d'etat in Turkey. But beyond that also, there were issues about trade, cooperation in terms of trade, cooperation in terms of agriculture, and cooperation in the health sector. But you made a point about, a lot of Turkish citizens living in Nigeria. And some of these Turkish citizens, they have schools, they have hospitals, but they've been targeted as members of the opposition. Iyobosa, do you think that they are under any threat now that the Nigerian government seems to be more or less on the same page with Turkey?
Yeah, first, let me say that I was in Turkey about 2 years ago, and I was there for about 2 weeks, and visited some critical stakeholders in a Turkish democracy. And I knew that it was a matter of time before this present government clamped down on the Fethullah organizations, which has a huge followers in Turkey. Now, if you look at their presence in Nigeria, for example, when the so-called coup was aborted, the present government asked those companies, those institutions that are operating in Nigeria to change their name. For example, the Turkish university in Nigeria, for example, was forced to change its name to Nine University because the Turkish government said they are not government institutions and that they are followers of Fethullah organization and that they don't have moral right to use the Turkish name for business. Now, if you also look at the Turkish college you have in Nigeria here, they were also forced to change their name. If you look at Turkish hospitals in Nigeria here, they were also forced to change their name, which shows that the present government of Erdogan has been very intolerant with opposition. And it's very intolerant with opposition, and sometimes they take irrational decisions, because of their selfish political interest.
Well, there were other issues in that, in the course of that summit, coming out of the bilateral meeting between our two countries. The education sector. If indeed it is true that it's the Fethullah organization that is most active, more active in the education sector in Nigeria, again, I restate the question. Do you see some of those schools, some of those hospitals being threatened?
As a matter of fact, I was told some time ago that the Turkish government made a request to the Nigerian government to stop them from operating in Nigeria here. That I was told authoritatively, and I confirmed that from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that they asked the federal government to stop them from doing business in Nigeria here for continuing with the hospital, the education, and other business sectors in Nigeria here, that they should stop them, that they are terrorist group, because don't forget that the present government in Turkey has classified Fethullah organizations as terrorist group. And as a result of that, Nigerian government should prevent them from carrying out business in Nigeria here. But I was told that the present government, Nigerian government, refused, and that they don't have sufficient reasons to believe that Fethullah organization is a terrorist group. And on the basis of that, they turned down the request of the Turkish government. So, as a matter of fact, they are under serious threat.
Will you still consider the D8 relevant and strategic in terms of what the member states have been able to achieve so far, 20 years after its establishment, its formation?
Sorry, I didn't get a question.
I said, will you say we have gained from being a member of the D8, and will you say the organization is still strategic and relevant? It just celebrated its 20th anniversary, 20 years after. How will you say the D8 has fared?
I don't understand that.
Okay, I was shopping for a comment on the value of the D8 20 years after its formation.
Okay. That's No. I'm not too sure I want to comment on that.
You want to take that up?
In all honesty, I haven't followed, the D8 any closely before now. But the fact that it offers a platform on which the present government, led by the president, is now attempting to engage will mean that it offers opportunity regardless of, what they have achieved in 2 decades.
Well, I mean, the point I'm trying to drive at is that Nigeria belongs to many organizations.
Right.
Some of those organizations, we just joined them almost after a fashion because it's fashionable to do so.
Right.
But at the end of the day, Nigeria appears not to be strategic enough in terms of what it takes out of some of those organizations. And I guess that our foreign policy objective,
right,
in terms of what we do on the international stage,
yes,
should be Nigeria's strategic interest first, rather than the ceremony, rather than just mere engagement, rather than being seen to belong. That's the point I'm trying to
Well,
make.
we are in a situation where history is not a helpful guide. I'm aware that this present administration has recently stepped up policies on trade engagement. The government recently opened the National Office of Trade Negotiations, and which is headed by Ambassador Sakwe, who came from the WTO. So this is one of the first opportunities. I knew, that we tried to engage on the UN platform a few weeks back, and this is, an important opportunity for engagement with the D8, particularly engaging bilaterally. I know that similar reforms have been done on the investment front. So regardless of opportunities you've had in the past that you didn't take up, I do think that the current regime is quite serious
for example,
in trying to take up opportunities.
For example.
And so we should be interested more in the details of the conversations.
For example.
Begin to track what's going to happen when their minister visits in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, see, there are about 48 Turkish companies operating in Nigeria, doing business in Nigeria. There are so many Pakistani investments and business interests also in Nigeria. Now, when you look at it, how do you find that kind of investment from the Nigerian side in some of those other countries? So that's why I was making the point about Nigeria's strategic interests. Yes. When we join these organizations, what do we take back? In terms of business, in terms of returns, in terms of people-to-people diplomacy. But in any case, I mean, it's food for thought. We'll move on. You are watching the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise channel with me, Rueben Abati, in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. We'll take a short break. You stay with us. We'll be back. you.